Sometimes I'll get complaints from viewers for not cursing enough. I don't really take them seriously. I don't think most of them are intended seriously. But I kind of bring it on myself because the name of my channel, or at least the handle of my channel, is Steve Likes to Curse. And people maybe sometimes wonder, why did you call your channel Steve Likes to Curse? And before I had my YouTube channel, I also had my blog, which is you can still see on stevelikestocurse.com, although mostly the last few years it's just been a place that I've used to repost videos of mine. There's nothing really original there. It's just sort of maintained as like an archive of stuff that I've done before. But it's Steve Likes to Curse and stevelikestocurse.com, and the YouTube channel is Steve Likes to Curse, and my Facebook profile is facebook.com/Steve Likes to Curse. Why did I call it that? People say I don't swear enough to justify naming everything after me liking to curse. The reason it popped into my head in the first place, I think, was because I remember an email that an old friend had written to me. It was actually an email exchange that we were in with a couple of other friends of ours, where we were like copying each other and talking back and forth. I forget what we were even talking about, but I wrote an email response in this exchange, and I guess I must have sworn in it. I must have dropped a couple of fucks or shits or whatever, just as I normally talk, as I normally write, just, you know, in due course of expressing myself. And my friend Dave responded to my email to everybody else, and he says, the thing I've always appreciated about Steve is his ability to articulately tell you what's on his mind while also cursing like a sailor. And to this day, I think that's one of the nicest things anybody's ever said about me. And I'm just so proud that one of my friends, completely unbidden, would say that about me. Would say that, yeah, I sound articulate and intelligent, but I also curse like a sailor. I think that's, what a wonderful compliment to be paid. So that's where Steve Likes to Curse comes from. I don't swear compulsively, as most of you who watch my stuff regularly have probably noticed. If you come to the channel just hoping to see a dude dropping shits and fucks and cocksuckers left and right for no rhyme or reason, it's not really your thing. I'm not really doing that. I always think of the bit on Eddie Murphy's Raw special when he's talking about how Bill Cosby bitched at him about how he swore too much in his act. And Eddie Murphy said he was offended that Bill Cosby would say that because he made it sound like he was just walking out on stage going, piss, shit, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, tits, suck my dick, good night, And he's like, there were some jokes in there too. What's the big deal with profanity anyway? I've never understood that, because of course one person's swear word, one person's expression of profanity is another person's something else. I mean, not everyone is offended by the same words in the same way. So it just makes very, very little sense to me that we have these sort of cultural prohibitions. Oh, you can't say fuck. That's a word you can't ever say fuck. Shit is touchy, although the acceptance of shit is sort of increasing as we go on. But you should still probably avoid saying shit. You should still probably avoid saying, ass and bitch and things like that. And for God's sake, please, whatever you do, don't ever say cunt. Don't ever, ever, ever say cunt in any context at all. I'm amazed at how many people who swear constantly, whose language is filled with what are considered profane words, obscenities, but they won't say cunt. They won't say cunt. They'll say bitch, which takes out I just don't want to say something that could be interpreted as misogynistic defense. They'll say bitch, but they won't say cunt. It's like a magic word. I think that's the part of it that really bothers me the most. That's the part about the idea of banning profanity or looking down on people who use profane words. It's the idea that they're magic words. They're swear words. They're curse words in the literal sense. Oh, you don't want to say that. You can't say that. Why the fuck can't I say that? What is the harm? Do you think does it coarsen the culture? You hear that a lot. Well, if we become more tolerant, if we become more accepting and more permissive about profanity, then it coarsens the culture. Does not our attitude toward violence coarsen the culture as well? Does not our attitude toward the sexual objectification of people coarsen the culture? I don't really get that. And just because you can use you can use coarse language or profane words to express yourself doesn't necessarily mean that you're expressing yourself in a way that is inarticulate or primitive or brutal. If you can listen to the dialogue in a play or a film written by David Mamet or Paul Thomas Anderson or the Coen or Quentin Tarantino, and it doesn't have a beautiful quality, I mean, then you and I just have a fundamental disagreement on what good dialogue is. I've never heard a satisfactory explanation for why fuck is an unacceptable word to use in polite conversation, but say copulate isn't. You know, if you're in a situation where it's considered acceptable to talk about sexual intercourse, maybe people are offended by the subject matter. Although in most cases, I don't think that's the case. I think people are just offended by the word fuck. They just don't want to hear the word fuck. You can use words like couple or copulate. You can talk about intercourse. You can talk about sexual intimacy. You can dance around it in all these different ways. But you can't say fuck. You just can't say it. I don't understand that. There are ratings websites you can go to if you are a hypervigilant, alarmist parent, and you don't want your kid to hear, fucking shit and cocksucker and asshole in on TV by accident or in a film. You can go to these websites and you'll find like itemized lists of you type in a film, type in a title, be like, okay, Pulp Fiction, and the website crashes because there's just so much in there. But it'll tell you, okay, there are 97 uses of the word fuck. There are 23 uses of the word shit. There are 18 uses of the word asshole. I mean, like, someone had to sit there and watch this film and hit a button every time somebody said fuck or somebody said shit, just so you as a parent could then look up this title and know, okay, I can't watch this movie. Somebody says fuck 23 times. It's ridiculous. Who has time to waste on this? And who is so sensitive, whose sensibilities are so delicate and tender that you can't even stand to hear someone else pronounce the word?
Of course, just because I'm okay with profanity, and in fact really like profanity and use it in my own vocabulary quite often, doesn't mean that there aren't words that I don't find offensive. There are lots of words that I find offensive, that bother me at various levels. The one word I think that I just detest hearing, the way that a lot of people who I would consider too prudish might feel about words like fuck or shit or cocksucker or whatever, is the word illegitimate when it's used in the context of a child. When you say like a child born out of wedlock is an illegitimate child. That really, really, really bothers me. That seems dehumanizing to me, to refer to a child that way. In addition to anachronistic, I mean, how many children today are born to parents who may very well be committed parents, be in a committed relationship with each other, but they just happen to not be legally married, and we label that child illegitimate. That's just really, really, really deeply offensive to me. The other thing that I don't like is when people try to refer to words of profanity without actually saying the word. And these are words like, you might say the F word instead of saying fuck. Or my favorite is the SH word instead of shit, the SH word. That seems to me as a wish to have it both ways. You want to refer to a word, you want to talk about it, but you don't want to actually have to say it. That seems just the limit of childishness, of infantile behavior. If you're going to talk about the word fuck, if the word fuck is interesting enough to you that you want to have a conversation about it and you're going to refer to it in this conversation, can we not just be adults and say the word fuck? can you not just cite it as an example without having to be a little child about it, like a first grader who doesn't want to get in trouble for swearing? It's the F word, the C word, the B word. Just say the word. The most commonly encountered example of this, of course, is the N word. People say the N word instead of saying the word nigger. And look, I understand the sentiment behind it. I understand the feeling behind it. I'm offended by that word as well. I would add racial epithets to that list of the sorts of words that do actually offend me, despite my embracing of profanity. I understand why someone might not want to say the word nigger, because it's a horrible word. It's a very deeply offensive, hurtful, dehumanizing word. I completely get why someone would not want to say it, why they would rather say the N-word. But if you're going to talk about it, if you want to have an adult conversation about this word, I feel like the least you have to do is say the word. And by not saying the word, by saying N-word instead of nigger, even when you are talking about the word and you are not using it to inflict harm on someone, you're not using it in an abusive way, you're using it in a constructive way, in an analytical way, to try and understand it, to try and talk about it, to try and argue about its meaning and its use and so forth. If you're not going to say it, even in those circumstances, if you're going to say the N-word, what you're doing is you are imbuing this word that you hate with even more power. You're saying, this word is so powerful, this word is so frightening to me, I'm not even going to say it. And I do not understand that. And I don't see how that's healthy, and I don't see how that's adult. If you want to have a conversation about racism, about racial language, about horrible ideas and horrible, mean, abusive things that we say to one another based on racial categories, you have to talk about those words, and you have to be able to speak those words in that context. I just don't see any other way you can have an adult conversation about it without saying the word. The N-word is something that is said by someone who is afraid of the word and someone who wants to talk, to have an adult conversation, but talk like a child. I'll tell you something else that bothers me about the way language is portrayed on television, especially broadcast television and basic cable, where there are a lot more language restrictions on what people are allowed to say. When you watch a sci-fi show and they make up swear words for the characters to use in the future, like the famous one that most people are probably most familiar with is from the more recent version of Battlestar Galactica, where they said frackin' instead of fucking, frack. Or Babylon 5 did something similar, I think, with the word frag. They said frag, which is the same sort of... They don't say fuck, they say frag. How stupid is this? It's such a contrivance. It's such an obvious contrivance. You want people to swear, but you're writing a show that's going to be airing on a network with language restrictions, with standards and practices that restricts your characters from saying these kinds of words. So how do we get around it? We'll just make up some words and have them say those words instead, and we'll just chalk it up to, well, it's 300 years in the future. The language has just evolved. Come on, the language is exactly the same and instantly recognizable to all of us viewers here in the 21st century watching it, right? The English language has not changed that much in however long it's been until the era of the show begins. It's recognizably, completely, immediately comprehensible as modern, contemporary 21st century American English. Except for this one thing. All of the swear words are different. Come on. What the fuck?